Lucia Dante slid the leather folder across the mahogany table, her wedding dress whispering against the chair as she leaned back. The diamonds at her throat caught the lamplight, cold and sharp as her voice. "Congratulations," she said, meeting Matteo Volkov's eyes without flinching. "You just confessed to every crime." Matteo's hand froze halfway to the folder. For a man who'd built an empire on fear, who could silence a room with a glance, the confusion on his face was almost beautiful, almost human. He opened the folder slowly, like a man checking for a bomb. Inside, transcripts, audio timestamps, bank transfers, names, dates, locations. 15 pages of meticulous documentation, each line a nail in a coffin he'd spent years building. His jaw tightened. "What is this?" "Evidence," Lucia said. She kept her hands folded in her lap, the picture of composure, even as her pulse hammered against her ribs. "Every conversation we've had since the engagement. Every confession you thought was pillow talk. Every crime you thought died with the men you buried." Matteo looked up, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something flicker behind those cold gray eyes. Not rage. Fear. "You recorded me. I documented you," she corrected. "There's a difference. One's illegal. The other's just good legal practice." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against marble. "You think you can walk out of here with this? You think I'll just let you destroy everything I've built?" Lucia didn't move. "I think you'll let me walk out of here because if anything happens to me, every file in that folder goes to the FBI, the press, and your enemies. In that order. You'd be dead before the first reporter picked up the phone." "Maybe," she said, and finally, she smiled. It was the saddest smile Matteo had ever seen. "But you'd still be finished. And honestly, Matteo, I stopped caring about staying alive the day you put my father in the ground." The words hit him like a punch. She watched the recognition bloom across his face, watched him piece it together. The name, the timing, the reason she'd never once flinched when he touched her. "Dante," he whispered. "Victor Dante. My father." Lucia stood now, smoothing her dress. "The man you buried alive 15 years ago. Remember him?" "I do. I remember waiting for him to come home. I remember my mother crying herself to sleep every night for 5 years straight. I remember being 13 and realizing that monsters don't hide under beds. They wear expensive suits and call themselves kings." Matteo's face had gone white. "Lucia, don't." Her voice cracked, just once, and she hated herself for it. "Don't say my name like you know me. You don't. You never did. You married a ghost, Matteo. I've been dead since the day you killed him." She picked up her clutch, turned toward the door. "Wait." His voice was raw. "If you're going to destroy me, at least tell me why you waited. Why marry me? Why not just turn over the evidence and watch me burn?" Lucia paused at the threshold. When she looked back, her eyes were dry, but something in them looked older than 28. Looked ancient. "Because revenge isn't about justice," she said quietly. "It's about making sure you feel every second of what you did to us. And I wanted you to fall in love with me first." She left him standing in the study, surrounded by the empire he'd built on bones, holding evidence of his own destruction. The door clicked shut behind her, soft as a grave closing. 72 hours earlier, Lucia had been standing in her apartment, staring at an envelope that had no return address. Inside, an invitation. Cream cardstock, gold lettering. Her name already printed beside his. Not a question, a summons. Her mother, Isabella, stood in the doorway of the kitchen, flour on her hands from the bread she'd been kneading. She'd aged 20 years in the last 15, grief carving lines into her face that no amount of makeup could hide. "What is it?" Isabella asked, though her voice already knew. Lucia held up the invitation. "He wants to marry me." The bowl slipped from Isabella's hands and shattered against the tile floor. Neither of them moved to clean it up. "No," Isabella whispered. "No, you can't. You can't. Lucia, he'll destroy you. He already destroyed us, Mom." Lucia's voice was calm, practiced. She'd been preparing for this moment since she was 16, since she'd decided that law school wasn't about building a career, it was about building a weapon. "The question is whether I'm going to let him get away with it." "What are you talking about?" Lucia walked to her bedroom, pulled a box from under the bed. Inside, files, recordings, photographs of Matteo leaving buildings he claimed he'd never visited, phone records linking him to murders the police had written off as gang violence. And at the bottom, a legal brief she'd spent 3 years perfecting. "I'm talking about marrying him," Lucia said, spreading the documents across her bed like tarot cards predicting someone's death. "I'm talking about getting close enough to record every confession he's too arrogant to hide. I'm talking about using marital privilege laws as a cover while I document everything. And then I'm talking about burning his entire empire to the ground." Isabella sank onto the bed, her hand trembling as she touched one of the photographs. It was Matteo at their father's funeral. In the background, barely visible, watching, making sure the body stayed buried. "He'll kill you," Isabella said. "The moment he suspects." "He won't suspect," Lucia interrupted. "Because he thinks I'm terrified. He thinks I'm a lamb walking to slaughter. He has no idea that I've spent half my life studying men like him, learning how they think, how they justify their cruelty. He thinks this marriage is about control." She looked at her mother, and her eyes were hard as diamonds. "He has no idea it's about revenge." "Lucia." Isabella's voice broke. "Baby, please. I can't lose you too." "You won't." Lucia knelt in front of her mother, took her hands. "But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Isabella looked at her daughter, at the woman grief had forged from a broken girl, and slowly nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Play the part," Lucia said. "Be scared. Be desperate. Make him think he's won. And when I bring him down, I need you to be ready to run. Because they'll come for you too." 3 days later, Lucia walked into the Volkov estate for the first time. The mansion sat on the cliffs overlooking New Haven's harbor, all white stone and bulletproof windows, a fortress disguised as a home. Security cameras tracked her from the gate to the front door. She counted 12, made mental notes of blind spots. A man in a black suit opened the door before she could knock. He didn't speak, just gestured for her to follow. The inside of the house was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive, cold, designed to intimidate. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, art worth more than most people made in a lifetime, hanging on walls like trophies. She was led to a sitting room where Matteo waited, standing by the window with his back to her. He didn't turn when she entered. "Miss Dante," he said, his voice smooth as poison. "Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" Now he turned, and she got her first real look at the man who'd killed her father. He was handsome, she'd give him that. Tall, dark hair going silver at the temples, gray eyes that probably made most women forget to breathe. But Lucia had learned to see past handsome, had learned to see the calculation behind every smile, the violence behind every polite word. "We always have choices," Matteo said, moving toward her. "Some are just more pleasant than others." "Is that what you told my father before you buried him?" The room went silent. Matteo stopped walking. For a long moment, he just stared at her, and she wondered if she'd pushed too far, too fast. If he'd kill her right here, right now, and damn the consequences. Then he laughed. Actually laughed, low and bitter. "So you know," he said. "Good. I hate pretending. Is that why you're doing this?" Lucia asked, keeping her voice steady even as her heart tried to punch through her ribs. "Some kind of sick trophy? Marry the daughter of the man you murdered?" "I'm doing this," Matteo said, closing the distance between them, "because my brother asked me to. And because I was curious to see if you'd actually show up." "Your brother?" "Roman." Matteo gestured to the chair. "Sit. We need to talk." Lucia sat, not because she wanted to, but because her knees had started shaking and she didn't want him to see. Matteo poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. "I don't drink," she said. "You do now?" He sat across from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Expensive. Probably Italian. Let me tell you how this is going to work. You're going to marry me. You're going to live in this house. You're going to smile at the parties and keep your mouth shut at the meetings. And in exchange, your mother gets to keep breathing." There it was, the threat she'd been waiting for. "And if I refuse?" Matteo leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then Isabella has an unfortunate accident. Maybe a car crash. Maybe a home invasion. Maybe she just disappears, like your father. The world's a dangerous place for women living alone. Lucia took a slow sip of the whiskey, let it burn down her throat. Took her time setting the glass down. Okay, she said. Matteo blinked. Okay, I'll marry you. She met his eyes, held them. But I have conditions. You're not in a position to make conditions. Neither are you, she said calmly. Because if I marry you under duress, any lawyer worth their degree can get it annulled in a week. And then where does that leave you? Still needing whatever it is your brother wants, but without the legal cover of marriage. Matteo studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it was the first genuine expression she'd seen on his face. You're smarter than your father, he said. My father was plenty smart. He just trusted the wrong people. Smart people don't trust anyone. Matteo stood, moved to the window. What are your conditions? I want my own room, my own space. I'll play the wife in public, but in private, I want boundaries. Done. What else? I want access to legal resources. Books, databases, consultation rights with attorneys. I'm not giving up my career just because I'm married to you. Ambitious, Matteo murmured. Fine. Anything else? Lucia stood, smoothed her skirt. I want your word that my mother stays safe. No matter what happens between us, she's off limits. Matteo turned, and something flickered across his face. Something that might have been respect. You have my word, he said. Victor's family is off limits. I'm Victor's family. You're about to be my wife. That's different. Lucia walked to the door, paused with her hand on the frame. One more thing, Matteo? My father didn't steal from you. Yes, Matteo said quietly. He did. No. She looked back at him. He was going to testify against you. That's why you killed him. Not because he stole. Because he was going to tell the truth. Matteo's face went very still. Who told you that? Does it matter? Lucia pulled the door open. I'll see you at the altar, Matteo. Try not to bury anyone else before the wedding. She walked out before he could respond, her heels clicking against marble, her heart screaming run, 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 even as her mind whispered wait. Wait, this is just the beginning. The wedding took place at St. Dominic's Church, a Gothic cathedral in the old district where the Volkov family had been baptizing their children and burying their dead for 3 generations. Lucia arrived alone, no bridesmaids, no family except Isabella sitting in the front pew with tissues already pressed to her eyes. Father Caruso, an old priest with trembling hands and kind eyes, met her at the entrance. Miss Dante, he said softly, are you certain about this? Lucia adjusted her veil. Does it matter if I'm certain? It matters to God. Then you can ask him to forgive me after. She started toward the aisle, then paused. Father, did you know my father? Victor Dante. The priest's face went pale. I heard his confession once, he whispered. 2 days before he disappeared. What did he say? I can't tell you that, child. The seal of confession. He's dead, Father. The seal died with him. Father Caruso looked at her for a long moment. Then he leaned close, his voice barely audible. He said he'd made a terrible mistake. He said he'd gotten involved with men who made money from suffering, and he couldn't live with it anymore. He asked God to forgive him, and he asked me to watch over his daughter if anything happened to him. Lucia's throat tightened. You've done a terrible job. I know. The priest's eyes were wet. I'm sorry, Lucia. I'm so sorry. The organ began to play. Lucia took a breath, lifted her chin, and walked down the aisle toward the man who'd killed her father. Matteo stood at the altar in a black suit that probably cost more than her law school tuition, his face unreadable. Roman stood beside him as best man, a smile playing at his lips like he was watching a particularly entertaining play. Roman Volkov was everything Matteo wasn't. Where Matteo was contained, controlled, Roman was fluid, charming. He had the kind of face that made you want to trust him, right up until he slit your throat. Lucia had researched him too, had learned that while Matteo was the public face of the Volkov Empire, Roman was its brain. Matteo gave the orders, but Roman decided what those orders would be, which meant Roman had ordered her father's death. She reached the altar. Matteo took her hand, and his skin was warm, human. For some reason, that made it worse. Father Caruso began the ceremony, his voice shaking. Lucia barely heard the words. She was too busy counting security guards, noting exits, memorizing faces of every person in attendance. These were Matteo's people, his soldiers, his supporters. In 3 months, she'd know all their names, all their secrets, all the ways they'd betrayed their own humanity for money. Matteo Volkov, Father Caruso said, "Do you take Lucia Dante to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Matteo said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Lucia Dante, do you take Matteo Volkov to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She thought of her father, thought of him begging for his life while dirt filled his mouth, thought of her mother crying in the dark, thought of every person Matteo had hurt, every family he'd destroyed, every life he'd ruined in his climb to power. "I do," she said, and meant it like a curse. "Then by the power vested in me," Father Caruso whispered, "I pronounce you husband and wife." Matteo lifted her veil, and for a moment, they just looked at each other, predator and prey, each thinking they knew which role they played. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "You're scared," he whispered. "Good. Fear makes people honest." Lucia smiled, the kind of smile that could cut glass. "I'm not scared, Matteo. I'm patient." He pulled back, something uncertain flickering in his eyes. Then he kissed her, and it was gentle, almost reverent, and that made her hate him even more. Because monsters shouldn't be gentle. Monsters should be easy to kill. The reception was held at the estate, a lavish affair with champagne fountains and a string quartet, and enough caviar to feed a small country. Lucia played her part perfectly, smiled at the right moments, laughed at unfunny jokes, let Matteo's hand rest possessively on her waist while his associates congratulated him on his beautiful bride. Roman approached an hour into the reception, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "The blushing bride," he said, offering her a glass. "You look radiant, Lucia." "Doesn't she look radiant, Matteo?" "She does," Matteo agreed, but his eyes were on Roman, watchful. "I wanted to welcome you to the family properly," Roman continued, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. "It's rare that Matteo commits to anything long-term. Last woman he proposed to ended up at the bottom of the harbor." "Roman," Matteo said, his voice low with warning. "What?" "I'm just saying, our family has a complicated relationship with marriage. With commitment in general, really. We tend to dispose of things that no longer serve us." Lucia sipped her champagne. "Good thing I'm useful then." Roman's smile widened. "Oh, you have no idea how useful you are. Do you know why Matteo married you, Lucia?" "Roman, that's enough." "Because I told him to," Roman finished, talking over his brother. "I told him that marrying Victor Dante's daughter would send a message. That we don't just win, we erase. We take everything from our enemies, even their legacy, even their children." The champagne turned to acid in Lucia's stomach, but she kept her face neutral. "That's very romantic, isn't it?" Roman leaned closer, and she could smell bourbon on his breath. "I wanted to tell you a story, Lucia, about a man who once betrayed this family. Would you like to hear it?" "No," Matteo said firmly. "She wouldn't." "I think she would." Roman's eyes glittered. "See, this man thought he could steal from us and walk away. Thought he could just resign, disappear, start fresh somewhere far away. But we found him, and we didn't just kill him. Where's the lesson in that? Where's the deterrent?" Lucia's nails dug into her palm. "What did you do?" "We buried him alive," Roman said casually, like he was describing a weekend trip. "Took him to the old limestone quarry beneath the city. The catacombs, we call them. Put him in a box, lowered him into the ground, and let him scream until his voice gave out. They say it took 3 days for him to die. 3 days of darkness and dirt and the sound of his own heartbeat getting slower and slower until finally, silence." "That's enough," Matteo growled, and there was real anger in his voice now. But Roman wasn't done. He looked at Lucia, tilted his head like a curious cat. "The funny thing is, we never found out what he did with the money. $2 million, just gone. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you, Lucia?" "How would I know?" she managed to say. "I was 13. Roman straightened, drained his champagne. "Well, if you ever figure it out, do let us know. We'd hate for history to repeat itself." He walked away, leaving Lucia and Matteo standing in the middle of the celebration, surrounded by laughter and music and people who'd kill her without blinking if Roman gave the word. Matteo turned to her, and for the first time, she saw something like concern on his face. Ignore him. He's drunk. He's threatening me. He's testing you, Matteo corrected, seeing if you'll break, if you'll run, and if I do. Matteo's hand tightened on her waist, pulling her closer. To anyone watching, it looked intimate, loving, but Lucia could feel the steel beneath the gentleness. Then you prove him right, Matteo said quietly. And I can't protect you from someone I agree with. I don't need your protection. Yes, he said, and something sad crossed his face. You do. He led her to the dance floor, and they swayed to music Lucia couldn't hear over the pounding of her own pulse. She'd been prepared for violence, for cruelty, for the kind of obvious evil that was easy to fight. She hadn't been prepared for this, for the way Matteo held her like she was something precious, for the way he looked at her like he was trying to figure out a puzzle he actually wanted to solve. Why did you really marry me? She asked as they danced. I told you. Roman asked me to. That's not an answer. Matteo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was so low she almost didn't hear it. Because I'm tired of being alone, he said. And because when I saw your picture, I thought maybe if I could make one thing right, it would balance out all the things I've done wrong. You can't fix murder with marriage, Matteo. I know, he said, but I can try. The song ended. Matteo stepped back, and the moment broke. He was the Mafia king again, all cold control and calculated moves. He kissed her hand like a gentleman and left her standing in the middle of the dance floor, her wedding dress suddenly feeling like a shroud. Lucia made it through the rest of the reception on autopilot. Smiled. Posed for photos. Cut the cake with Matteo's hand over hers, the knife sliding through fondant like it was sliding through flesh. At midnight, the guests began to leave. Roman was the last to go, stopping to kiss Lucia's cheek on his way out. Welcome to the family, he whispered in her ear. Try not to end up buried like your father. Then it was just her and Matteo, alone in the enormous house, the staff dismissed for the night. Matteo led her upstairs to his private wing, to the study where she'd eventually slide that damning folder across the table, to the moment that had been inevitable since the day she'd opened that invitation. He poured himself a drink, offered her one. This time she took it. I know this isn't what you wanted, Matteo said, sitting behind his desk. I know you hate me. You have every right to. Thank you for the permission, Lucia said dryly. He almost smiled. I'm not going to force you into anything, Lucia. I meant what I said about your own room, your own space. This marriage can be whatever you need it to be. Can it be over? Eventually, he said. But not yet. Roman needs this to work. Needs the optics, the legitimacy. Give it a year. Then we can quietly divorce, and you can go back to your life. A year. A year. Lucia looked around the study. At the expensive art. At the locked filing cabinets that probably held enough evidence to put Matteo away for life. At the man himself, looking oddly vulnerable in the lamplight, like a boy playing dress-up in his father's clothes. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Did my father suffer? Matteo's face went blank. Lucia, I need to know. Did he beg? Did he cry? Did he call for my mother? For me? Yes, Matteo said quietly. He did. All of those things. And you didn't stop. No, Matteo said. I didn't stop. Lucia nodded slowly, processing. Then she set down her glass, pulled a small recording device from her clutch, and placed it on the desk between them. Thank you, she said. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Matteo stared at the recorder. At her. His face cycled through confusion, realization, fury, and finally, something that looked like respect. You're smarter than I thought, he said. I'm smarter than you'll ever know. What are you going to do with that recording? That depends, Lucia said. Are you going to try to stop me? They looked at each other across the desk, two predators circling, each trying to figure out if the other was prey or hunter. Finally, Matteo stood, walked around the desk, and took the recorder. Lucia's hand moved instinctively to the small knife strapped to her thigh beneath the wedding dress, but Matteo didn't attack. He just turned the recorder over in his hands, studying it. Then he handed it back to her. Keep it, he said. Keep all of them. Why? Because maybe, Matteo said softly, maybe if someone finally makes me pay for what I've done, I can stop paying for it in my nightmares. He walked to the door, paused. Your room is down the hall. Second door on the right. If you need anything, I'll be here. Matteo, Lucia called. He turned. Why did you really do it? Why did you kill my father? Because Roman told me to, Matteo said. And back then, I still believed that family was worth dying for. He looked at her, and his eyes were empty. I was wrong. He left her alone in the study, surrounded by evidence of his crimes, holding a recording that could destroy him, wondering why the hell he'd just let her keep it. It was the first crack in the foundation, the first sign that this wasn't going to be as simple as she'd thought. The first moment Lucia realized that revenge might cost her more than she'd bargained for. She looked down at the recorder in her hand, at the little red light still blinking, still capturing every word. What are you doing, Matteo Volkov? She whispered to the empty room. And from somewhere deep in the house, she could have sworn she heard someone whisper back, dying. If you're hooked on Lucia's revenge and want to see how this ends, stay tuned for part 2. Drop a comment telling me whose side you're on, Lucia's vengeance or Matteo's redemption. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the explosive conclusion. The first week of marriage, Lucia barely saw Matteo. He left early, came back late, and when they passed each other in the hallways of the sprawling estate, he nodded politely like she was a guest he'd forgotten to check out. She used the time to map the house. Every room, every exit, every security camera blind spot. She cataloged the staff, learned their schedules, figured out who was loyal to Matteo and who was loyal to Roman. On the 8th day, she found the library. It was tucked away on the 3rd floor, a massive room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor and enough books to stock a small university. Legal texts, mostly. Case law, criminal procedure, constitutional theory. Someone in this house had studied law the way Lucia had, obsessively, like it was a weapon they were learning to wield. She was running her fingers along the spines when Matteo's voice came from behind her. My father's collection, he said. He believed that understanding the law was the only way to break it properly. Lucia didn't turn around. Smart man. Terrible man, Matteo corrected. But smart, yes. He moved into the room, and she could feel him watching her. You can use this space if you want. I never come in here. Why not? Too many ghosts. Now she looked at him. He was in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He looked tired. Human. It was unsettling. Did your father teach you everything you know? She asked. He taught me that power is the only currency that matters, Matteo said. That mercy is weakness. That the only way to survive in this world is to make sure everyone else is more afraid of you than you are of them. Sounds lonely. It is. He moved to the window, looked out at the city spread below them like a game board. Your father, Victor, did he teach you anything? Lucia's throat tightened. He taught me that honesty matters. That doing the right thing is worth dying for. And look where it got him. Look where your father's lessons got you, she shot back. A loveless marriage to a woman who wants you dead. Congratulations. Matteo laughed, sharp and bitter. Fair point. He turned to face her. Can I ask you something, Lucia? You're going to anyway. Why didn't you just kill me? You've had opportunities. The wedding night, I was unarmed. You could have put a knife in my throat and claimed self-defense. My own lawyers would have helped you. Because killing you would be too easy, Lucia said. Death is an escape. I want you to live with what you've done. I want you to see everything you built turn to ash. I want you to lose everything, the way I lost everything. And then I want you to spend the rest of your life in a cell, remembering. Christ, Matteo breathed. You really do hate me. With every fiber of my being. Good, he said quietly. You should. He left the library, and Lucia stood there for a long time, staring at the space where he'd been, trying to reconcile the man who'd buried her father alive with the man who'd just walked away from her with resignation instead of rage. That night, she heard screaming. It came from Matteo's room, raw and agonized, the sound of someone being torn apart from the inside. Lucia stood outside his door for a full minute, debating. This wasn't her problem. Let him suffer. He'd earned it. But the screaming didn't stop. She opened the door. Matteo was tangled in his sheets, thrashing, still asleep, but fighting something only he could see. His face was wet with sweat, twisted in terror. "No," he gasped. "Please, no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Lucia crossed the room, shook his shoulder. "Matteo, wake up." He came awake swinging. His fist connected with her jaw, and she stumbled back, tasting blood. Matteo froze, horror dawning on his face as he realized what he'd done. "Lucia," he choked out. "God, I'm sorry I didn't." "It's fine," she said, even though her jaw throbbed. "You were having a nightmare." "It's not fine." He scrambled out of bed, reached for her face. She flinched away. "Please, let me see. Did I hurt you? I've had worse." "That's not the point." His hands were shaking. Actually shaking. "I swore I'd never." "Christ, I'm turning into him." "Into who?" "My father." Matteo sank onto the edge of the bed, dropped his head into his hands. "He used to beat my mother. Every time she disappointed him, every time she questioned him. Roman and I would hide in the closet and listen to her scream. And I swore I'd never be like him." Lucia should have left, should have walked out and let him drown in his guilt. But instead, she found herself sitting beside him, keeping careful distance between them. "What do you dream about?" she asked. "The people I've killed." His voice was hollow. "All of them. Standing in a circle around me, watching me dig. And I keep digging and digging, but the hole never gets deep enough to bury them all. My father, always," Matteo whispered. "He's the loudest. He tells me his daughter is coming for him, that she won't stop until I'm in the ground beside him. He's right. I know." Matteo looked at her, and his eyes were red. "I know you're going to destroy me, Lucia. I've known since the wedding. Maybe before. And the worst part is, I can't even hate you for it. Because you're right. I deserve it. I deserve all of it. Then why fight it?" "I'm not fighting it," he said. "I'm just trying to understand it. Trying to understand you. How someone who's suffered so much can still be standing. Still be fighting. Still be human." "I'm not human," Lucia said quietly. "Not anymore. You took that from me when you took my father. Then what are you?" She met his eyes. "I'm what you made me. A ghost with a pulse." Matteo reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, he touched her jaw where he'd hit her, feather-light. "I really am sorry." "You should be," Lucia said. But she didn't pull away. They sat there in the dark, killer and victim's daughter, both haunted by the same man for different reasons, until the sky started to lighten outside the window. The next morning, Roman came to breakfast. He walked into the dining room like he owned it, which, technically, he did. The Volkov estate belonged to both brothers, but everyone knew Roman was the one who really controlled it. Controlled everything. "Lucia," he said, kissing her cheek. She wanted to scrub her skin raw. "You're looking lovely. Marriage agrees with you." "Does it?" She sipped her coffee, kept her voice neutral. "Matteo, on the other hand, looks terrible." Roman sat down, gestured for the staff to bring him breakfast. "Bad night, brother?" Matteo's jaw tightened. "What do you want, Roman? Can I visit my baby brother and his beautiful wife? You never do anything without a reason." "Fair." Roman leaned back in his chair, studied Lucia. "I wanted to talk to you both about something. A business opportunity." "I'm not interested in your business," Lucia said. "Oh, but you should be. See, I've been thinking about your father. About that missing $2 million. And I realized something. Victor was smart. Too smart to just steal cash and run. He would have planned, prepared, hidden the money somewhere he knew his family could access it." Lucia's blood went cold, but she kept her face blank. So I'm wondering if maybe, just maybe, he left you something. A safety deposit box. A offshore account. A letter with instructions." Roman smiled. "You'd tell me if he had, wouldn't you, Lucia? We're family now, after all." "He left me nothing," Lucia said. "Except trauma and debt." "Hmm." Roman didn't look convinced. "Well, if you remember anything, do let me know. I'd hate for there to be misunderstandings between us." "Is that a threat?" Matteo asked, his voice low with warning. "It's a conversation," Roman said. "But it could become a threat if necessary. Depends on Lucia." "Leave her alone, Roman." "Why?" Roman tilted his head. "You going soft on me, Matteo? She's Victor's daughter. She's using you. Probably recording every word you say, building a case, waiting for the perfect moment to stab you in the back. And you're just letting her. She's my wife. She's a weapon pointed at your head. Roman stood, threw his napkin on the table. But fine. Play house if you want. Just remember, when she destroys you, I won't be there to pick up the pieces. You'll have earned exactly what you get. He left, and the silence he left behind was suffocating. He knows, Lucia said finally. He suspects, Matteo corrected. There's a difference. Not for long. He'll have me followed, my phone's tapped, my every move monitored. Then we'll be careful. We. Lucia stared at him. There is no we, Matteo. I'm not your partner. I'm your executioner. Then execute me, Matteo said calmly. You have recordings. You have evidence. Turn it over. End this. It's not enough yet. It's plenty. It's not Roman, she said, and the truth tasted like poison. You're the weapon, Matteo? But Roman's the one who aimed you. He ordered my father's death. He orchestrated this whole twisted marriage. And I won't be satisfied until I bring you both down. Matteo was quiet for a long time. Then he stood, moved to the window. What if I helped you? What? What if I helped you destroy Roman? He turned to face her. What if I gave you everything you need to take him down? Bank records, witness testimony, locations of bodies. Everything. Why would you do that? Because I'm tired, Matteo said simply. I'm tired of being his weapon. Tired of following orders I know are wrong. Tired of waking up screaming. If I'm going down anyway, I might as well take him with me. Lucia stood, closed the distance between them. You're lying. I'm not. You're trying to manipulate me. Make me trust you so I'll let my guard down. Maybe, Matteo admitted. Or maybe I'm just a monster who's finally grown a conscience. Either way, the offer stands. Help me destroy Roman, and I'll help you destroy me. You're insane. Probably. He smiled, sad and small. Is that a yes? Lucia looked at him for a long moment. At the man who'd killed her father. At the man who'd just offered to help her commit career suicide. At the contradiction he represented, violence wrapped in vulnerability. I need to think about it, she said. Take your time. Matteo moved toward the door, paused. Lucia? That money Roman mentioned. Do you actually have it? She could lie. Should lie. But something in his face, some desperate hope, made her tell the truth. Yes, she said. My father left it in a trust. I've had access since I turned 21. And you never touched it? It's blood money, Lucia said. I'd rather starve. Matteo nodded slowly. Your father would be proud of you. No, Lucia said quietly. He'd be ashamed I married his killer. He'd understand, Matteo said. Revenge makes us do terrible things. He left her alone in the dining room, and Lucia sat down heavily, trying to process what had just happened. Matteo Volkov had just offered to help her destroy his own brother. Either it was the most elaborate trap she'd ever seen, or he was telling the truth. Either way, she was in deeper than she'd ever intended. Over the next 3 weeks, Lucia and Matteo settled into a strange routine. They ate breakfast together, traded barbs that got less sharp and more familiar. He showed her the parts of the business he thought she should know, the legitimate fronts that hid the criminal empire. She showed him the legal briefs she was working on, the loopholes she'd found in RICO statutes. They were circling each other, predator and prey, each waiting for the other to make the killing move. And slowly, terrifyingly, Lucia started to see him as human. She saw the way he checked on the staff, made sure they were paid fairly, sent their kids to college. She saw him visit his mother's grave every Sunday, even though she'd been dead for 10 years. She saw him refuse jobs that would hurt civilians, even when Roman pushed. She saw the man he might have been if he'd been born into a different family, a different life. It made her hate him more, because monsters were easy to kill. Men were complicated. One night, a month into the marriage, Matteo came home covered in blood. Lucia was in the library when he stumbled in, his white shirt soaked crimson, his face pale. She was on her feet instantly. What happened? Roman sent a message, Matteo said, his voice hollow. A rival family was moving into our territory. He wanted me to remind them why that's a bad idea. How many? 3. Matteo sank into a chair. One of them was 19. A kid. He begged. Said he was just driving, didn't know what his cousins were doing. And I. You killed him anyway. I killed him anyway. Matteo looked at his hands, at the blood drying under his nails. Because Roman was watching. Because if I showed mercy, he'd question my loyalty. Because that's what we do. We kill kids and call it business. Lucia should have felt satisfied, should have been glad he was suffering. But instead, she found herself kneeling in front of him, taking his blood-stained hands in hers. Go shower, she said quietly. I'll get rid of the clothes. Why are you helping me? I don't know, she admitted. Maybe because I'm starting to think you're as much a victim of Roman as my father was. That doesn't excuse what I've done. No, Lucia agreed. It doesn't. But it explains it. Matteo looked at her, and something broke in his face. I don't deserve your kindness. Good thing I'm not being kind, Lucia said. I'm being strategic. Can't destroy you if you destroy yourself first. It was a lie, and they both knew it. That night, Lucia started to doubt. Started to wonder if revenge was worth it. If destroying Matteo would actually heal anything, or if it would just create more graves to haunt her. She stood in her room, holding the recordings she'd made, all the evidence she'd collected. Enough to put Matteo away for life. Enough to bring down the empire, but not enough to touch Roman. She made a decision. The next morning, she went to Matteo's study. He was at his desk, working through paperwork, and he looked up when she entered. I'll help you, she said without preamble. Help me what? Destroy Roman. She sat across from him. But I have conditions. Name them. When this is over, you turn yourself in. You confess to everything. Every murder, every crime, every sin. You don't get to walk away clean. Done. What else? My mother gets immunity. Whatever she knew, whatever she did, she walks away from this untouched. Agreed. And you tell me the truth. All of it. Why you really killed my father. Why you married me. Why you're doing this. Matteo leaned back in his chair. That's 3 questions. Then pick one. Why I married you, he said after a moment. I married you because Roman told me it would destroy you. That marrying Victor's daughter would break any spirit you had left, would turn you into a ghost haunting this house. And I thought. He stopped, swallowed hard. I thought maybe if I saved you, if I could show you that not all of us are monsters, it would balance the scales. Would make up for all the people I couldn't save. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I know. You can't save me, Matteo. I'm not looking to be saved. I know that too. He smiled sadly. But I had to try. Lucia stood, moved to the window. Outside, the city glittered in the morning sun, beautiful and corrupt, and full of people just trying to survive. Like her. Like Matteo, in his own twisted way. So how do we do this? She asked. How do we take down Roman? Carefully, Matteo said. He's paranoid, smart, and he has eyes everywhere. We'll need to be perfect. One mistake, and we're both dead. Then we'll be perfect. Over the next month, they plotted. Matteo showed her the business, the real business, the ledgers Roman kept that documented every illegal transaction, the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the network of corruption that stretched from New Haven to Washington. Lucia documented everything, not just recordings now, but photographs, bank statements, emails. She built a case that could take down not just Roman and Matteo, but half the city's elite. And somewhere in the midst of all that planning, all that scheming, something shifted between them. It started small. Matteo bringing her coffee the way she liked it. Lucia staying up late to help him with paperwork. Conversations that went deeper than strategy, that touched on philosophy, morality, the nature of guilt. One night, working late in the study, Lucia fell asleep on the couch. She woke to find Matteo draping a blanket over her, his touch gentle. Sorry, he whispered. Didn't mean to wake you. What time is it? 3 a.m. You should go to bed. So should you. Can't, Matteo said. The nightmares are worse when I'm tired. Lucia sat up, moved over to make room. Sit with me. He did, keeping careful distance between them. They sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Can I ask you something? Matteo said finally. Always. Do you ever regret it? This whole plan. Marrying me, putting yourself in danger, giving up everything for revenge. Lucia thought about it. Thought about the girl she'd been before her father died, bright and hopeful and naive. Thought about the woman she'd become, hard and calculating and hollow. Every day, she admitted. But I can't stop now. If I stop, if I let it go, Then what was it all for? What did I give up my life for? Maybe, Matteo said quietly, you gave it up for the chance to get it back. Maybe destroying us isn't about revenge. Maybe it's about liberation. Liberation from what? From us. From this world. From the weight of carrying your father's death like a stone around your neck. He looked at her. You've been so focused on making us pay, you forgot to let yourself live. I'll live when you're in prison. Will you? Matteo asked. Or will you just find a new enemy to destroy? A new mission to throw yourself into? When does it end, Lucia? When do you get to be happy? I don't deserve to be happy. Why not? Because I'm in love with the man who killed my father, she said, and the words were out before she could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Matteo stared at her. What? Forget it, Lucia said, standing abruptly. I didn't mean. He caught her wrist, pulled her back down. Say it again. No. Lucia, please. She looked at him, at the hope and horror warring on his face, and something in her broke. I'm in love with you, she said, and started to cry. I hate myself for it. I wake up every morning and I want you dead, and then I see you, and all I want is for you to touch me, to hold me, to tell me everything's going to be okay, even though we both know it's not. I'm in love with you, and it's destroying me. Matteo pulled her into his arms, and she let him, sobbing into his chest while he stroked her hair. I know, he whispered. God, Lucia, I know. I'm in love with you too. Have been since the wedding. Maybe before. And it's killing me because I know I don't deserve you. Know that loving you doesn't undo what I did to your father. But I can't help it. I can't stop. We're toxic, Lucia choked out. We're poison. I know. This will never work. I know. I'm still going to destroy you. I know. He pulled back, cupped her face in his hands. But can we have tonight? Just one night where we're not enemies. Where we're just two broken people who somehow found each other in the dark. Lucia knew she should say no. Should push him away, maintain the boundaries, remember why she was here. But she was so tired of being strong. So tired of carrying the weight alone. One night, she whispered. He kissed her, and it was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't violent or possessive or cruel. It was gentle, reverent, like he was afraid she'd shatter if he held her too tight. And for one night, Lucia let herself forget. Let herself be loved by the man she was going to destroy. Let herself be human again, just for a few hours, before the war resumed. The next morning, she woke up alone. Matteo had left a note on the pillow. Roman knows. He's coming for both of us. The evidence is in the safe. Combination is your father's birthday. Whatever happens, finish this. M. Lucia's blood turned to ice. She grabbed her phone, tried to call Matteo. It went straight to voicemail. She ran to the study. The safe was open, and inside, files. Bank records. Recorded confessions. Locations of bodies. Everything they'd compiled over the last month. Everything they needed to destroy Roman. And a video file, time-stamped from 3 hours ago. She played it. Matteo appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a warehouse. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. Lucia, he said, his voice rough. If you're watching this, I'm already dead. Roman figured it out. Don't know how, but he did. He's offered me a choice. Give him the evidence and you, or die. I chose option 3. The camera panned, and Lucia's stomach dropped. Roman stood behind Matteo, a gun pressed to his brother's head. Lucia Dante, Roman said, smiling at the camera. You're clever, I'll give you that. But you forgot one crucial detail. I own this city. I own the police, the judges, the FBI agents you were planning to give that evidence to. Did you really think you could destroy me? Me. Roman, Matteo said. Let her go. She was just. Shut up. Roman hit him with the gun, and Matteo's head snapped to the side. Your brother here thought he could betray me for a woman. Thought he could play hero. But there are no heroes in our world, Lucia. Just survivors and corpses. So here's what's going to happen. You have 24 hours to bring me that evidence and my $2 million. If you do, I'll make his death quick. If you don't, I'll bury him alive, just like we buried your father. And then I'll come for you, and your mother, and everyone you've ever loved. The video cut out. Lucia played it again, and again, looking for clues, for locations, for anything that could tell her where they were. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Lucia. It was Father Caruso. I need you to come to St. Dominic's. Now. It's about your mother. What about her? Just come. Please. Lucia grabbed the evidence, stuffed it in a bag, and ran. She reached the church in 15 minutes. Father Caruso was waiting outside, his face grave. Where's my mother? Lucia demanded. Inside. He opened the door. I'm sorry, child. I'm so sorry. Lucia ran into the church. Isabella sat in the front pew, and she wasn't alone. Roman stood beside her, a gun pressed to her temple. Surprise, he said. Did you really think I'd play fair? This is checkmate, Lucia. You give me the evidence, or I kill her. You have 10 seconds to decide. Lucia looked at her mother. Isabella was crying, but she shook her head, mouthing, don't. Where's Matteo? Lucia asked. Dead, Roman said casually. Shot him an hour ago. Dumped the body in the harbor. He died begging me to spare you. It was pathetic. Lucia felt something inside her shatter. Felt the last piece of humanity she'd been clinging to dissolve into rage. You're lying, she said. Am I? Roman smiled. Want to bet your mother's life on it? 5, Roman said. 4. Lucia looked at Isabella. At the woman who'd raised her alone, who'd sacrificed everything, who'd turned her daughter into a weapon because she'd been too broken to fight herself. 3. She looked at the bag in her hand. At 15 years of evidence. At the key to destroying Roman and everything he'd built. 2. She made her choice. Okay, Lucia said, setting the bag down. You win. Take the evidence. Let her go. Roman laughed. Did you actually think I'd honor that? Lucia, I'm disappointed. You're smarter than this. He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the church like judgment. But Isabella didn't fall. Roman did. He collapsed, blood blooming across his chest, confusion on his face. Behind him, Matteo lowered the gun, his hands shaking. Sorry I'm late, Matteo said. Traffic. Roman tried to speak, but only blood came out. He looked at his brother, betrayal in his eyes, and Matteo knelt beside him. You were wrong, Matteo said quietly. There are heroes in our world. They're just usually the last one standing. Roman died there, on the floor of St. Dominic's Church, surrounded by stained glass angels that had witnessed 100 years of confessions. Matteo stood, looked at Lucia. Are you okay? She ran to him, threw her arms around him, felt him solid and real and alive. You're supposed to be dead. Faked the video. Had to make Roman think he'd won. He pulled back, touched her face. I'm sorry. I couldn't risk telling you. Couldn't risk him finding out. You saved her. I saved us, Matteo corrected. All of us. Sirens wailed outside. Real FBI this time, not ones on Roman's payroll. Matteo had called them before coming to the church. We should run, Lucia said. We have time. We could disappear. No, Matteo said. No more running. We end this right. He picked up the bag of evidence, handed it to the FBI agent who walked through the door. Then he put his hands up. Matteo Volkov, he said. I'm here to confess. The trial took 6 months. Matteo pled guilty to everything. Murder, racketeering, conspiracy. The prosecution offered him deals, reduced sentences if he'd name names, give up associates. He refused, took full responsibility for everything he'd done, and walked into prison with his head high. Lucia visited him once, the day before his sentencing. You didn't have to do this, she said through the glass partition. You could have walked away. No, Matteo said. I couldn't. This is the only way I get to live with myself. How long did they give you? Life. No parole. He smiled sadly. Guess we don't get our happy ending. We were never going to, Lucia said. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some stories aren't meant to end happy. Maybe they're just meant to end honest. I love you, Matteo said. I need you to know that. Whatever you think of me, whatever you do next, I love you. I know, Lucia whispered. I love you too. That's the tragedy. She left him there, behind glass and bars, paying for his sins the only way he knew how. 6 months later, Lucia stood at her father's grave. She'd had him exhumed from the catacombs, given him a proper burial in a cemetery where the sun reached him. Her mother stood beside her, holding her hand. Do you think he'd forgive me? Lucia asked. For loving the man who killed him? I think, Isabella said carefully. He'd understand that love isn't always logical, and that destroying yourself for revenge doesn't honor the dead. It just creates more ghosts. Lucia placed flowers on the grave. I'm done, she said. No more revenge. No more crusades. I'm just going to try to live. Good, Isabella said. That's all he ever wanted for you. They walked away together, leaving Victor Dante to rest in peace at last. Lucia never saw Matteo again. Never wrote, never visited, never looked back. She went back to practicing law, started working with families of crime victims, helped them navigate the legal system he'd once controlled. She married eventually, had kids, built a life. But some nights, when she couldn't sleep, she'd think about a man in a cell who'd chosen punishment over freedom, guilt over escape, who'd loved her enough to destroy himself to save her. And she'd wonder if redemption was possible for people like them. If love could exist in the space between justice and mercy. If two broken people could ever really make each other whole. She never found the answers, but she kept asking the questions. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all any of them could do. Keep asking, keep trying, keep loving, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. Because in the end, revenge didn't heal anything. It just made the world a little emptier. But love? Love could fill the void, could make the ghosts rest, could turn burial grounds into gardens. Lucia learned to live with the paradox, learned to hold both truths at once. That Matteo Volkov was a monster, and that she'd loved him anyway. That some things could never be forgiven, and that forgiveness wasn't always the point. That her father was gone, and that she could finally let him rest. She stood at his grave one last time. Years later, an old woman with gray in her hair and grandchildren who'd never know the weight she'd carried. I did it, Dad, she whispered. I brought them down. I survived. I lived. She smiled through tears. And I'm finally free. The wind carried her words away, across the cemetery, across the city, across the years of grief and rage and love that had brought her here. And somewhere, in a prison far away, Matteo Volkov stood at his window and watched the same sunset, carrying the same burden, loving the same woman, paying the same price. They were bound together by blood and choice, by crime and consequence, by love that was wrong and right and impossible and true. And maybe that was its own kind of justice. Maybe that was enough. If this story shattered you the way it shattered me writing it, drop a comment below. Tell me if you think Lucia made the right choice. Tell me if love can exist in the space between revenge and redemption. And if you want more stories that will wreck you in the best way possible, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because some stories don't end happy, but they end honest. And sometimes, that's worth more than any fairy tale. Like this video if you stayed until the end. You're one of the real ones. See you in the next story.